friends, welcome back to our channel. So in today's session we'll discuss one more topic in operating systems, that is services provided by the operating system. Services of operating system. So here these services are categorized into two types. One is user services, another one is system services. But all these services are provided by the operating system. So coming to the first one, user services, the first one is program execution. Program execution. So coming to this program execution, so a program is executed from the main memory and this program will be saved in the secondary memory. So our CPU, so every process or every program will be executed by the CPU, right, processor. So before executing that by the CPU, that particular program should be loaded into the main memory from the secondary memory. So this will be done by the operating system. So a program should be loaded to main memory for execution. So this process will be done by the operating system, right? So there is one service provided by the operating system. So all the program or all the processes will be executed by the operating system, that means by the processor with the help of this operating system. And the second service is user interface. So in order to communicate with the computer is somewhat difficult because the user have to communicate with the computer with the help of instructions. For everything you have to use some instructions, and by using this interface it makes the user very easy to communicate with the computer, right? So here the computer means the hardware, that means either processor or a memory or IO devices, etc, etc. So the user can use this interface to easily communicate with the system, and this interface is of two types. One is command line interface, CLI. It's a command line interface. Command line interface. So here everything will be in terms of text-based commands. Text-based commands, right? So the user have to give the text-based commands in order to do the process. And there is one more thing, that is a GUI. GUI stands for a graphical user interface. And this graphical user interface, interface will be used by the user. That means we are having some widgets, okay, folders, and some sort of visibility, right? So visibility will be more, and this makes a user very easy to communicate with the computer, right? So example, we can go with the DOS operating system, which is a command line. So for everything, even if you want to create a file, if you want to create a folder, we have to use these text-based commands in this particular operating system. And graphical user interface, we can go with the Windows, okay, Linux, so Mac, all these things comes under this graphical user interface, right? So we can create a folders, or we can work on the folders or files with a simple mouse moves and by using the widgets, folders, etc, etc. So this is one best feature provided by the operating system, right? So with this user interface, it makes the user very easy to interact with the computer, right? Next, so I'm discussing about this user services, then we'll go with the system services. So two, and the third one IO operations. So coming to this third service, so we know the IO devices, input devices and output devices. So the user will use the input devices to give the input from to give the input to the system, and the system will give the output by using the output devices. For every IO device there will be a controller, right? So for example, if you are using some keyboard to give the input, right, it is having some keyboard controller through which we can communicate, right? So next, if you are using some memory, there will be some memory controller, and if you are using any a video, so we will be having, so if you are displaying the output on the monitor, example, right, this is the best example, so we will be having some video controller. Like this, for all the IO devices will be having a different controllers, and through this through this device controller, we will commonly call them as a device controllers. Okay, device controller. So by using these device controllers, so the operations will be communicated, and all these controllers will be maintained by the operating system. Okay, so these IO operations will be executed smoothly with the help of these controllers which are maintained by the operating system. So this is one service of given by the operating system. And the next one, communication. So here the communication means, so in our system there will be a lot of processors executing, right? So if one process want to communicate with another process which may reside in the same system or another system, so if we call it as and the another system, we call it as a network, right? If two systems are in a network, so there should be some sort of communication, right? There's some sort of communication should be done between the processes, and that process will be maintained by this communication, and this is also a service provided by the operating system, and this we call it as IPC, is inter-process communication. So in order to communicate between different processes which are maintained in the same system or in different systems, so this will be used. I mean, the operating system will take care about this communication, right, between different processes. Then the next one, file system and manipulations. So coming to the file system, so we are going to write some data onto the files. We can read the data from the files, and we can store the files in the memory. So everything will be done, right? The data can be stored in a files, right? And data can be retrieved from files, and we can search the files. And we can delete the files. And also we can create the files. So file will be having the data, right? So the file will be having the data, and we are going to search the file. We can store the data into files, we can retrieve the data from the files, and we can search the files, we can delete the files, we can create the files. So everything will be done with the help of this file system and manipulations, which is the service provided by the operating system. So we can do these processes in this service, and this is a service provided by the operating system. So without operating system, it would be very difficult to search the files, or we can manipulate the files, or we can create the files, right? And the next one, error detection. So while executing the program, some sort of errors may occur. So errors may occur in program or in hardware, right? So the operating system should know about all the errors that may occur, right? So the service provided by the operating system is these errors which are occurred from the program or hardware should be reported to the users. So errors, so whatever the errors we are getting, those errors will be reported to users so that the users can take a certain operation to debug those errors, right? So sometimes the OS itself debugs the errors. So if the errors occurs, so OS itself debugs the errors. Otherwise, the errors will be reported to the user so that user can take appropriate action to resolve those errors. So this will be maintained by the operating system, and by using this one, the system can work consistently without any errors. Okay, the errors can be occurred from either program or any hardware. It seems like from the memory point of view or some IO point of view, etc. So whatever it may be, everything should be known by the operating system. So all the errors that may occur must be known by the operating system, right? And those errors should be reported, or some sort of errors can be debugged itself. The operating system will take care about that one, right? So these are all called as a user services, right? And then coming to the system services. So there are a few services, system services. So the first one is resource allocation. So that means if a program or a process is being executed, so it may require a lot of resources. So similarly, our operating system can, more than one process can be executed at a time, and multiple resources should be allocated to different processes. And sometimes one different process may require the same resource. Okay, all these ways, so the resource can be allocated to each and every process without any overlapping, right? So that process will be done by the operating system. So we can have a different process 1, process 2. So if both are using the same resource, so without much waiting time, this resource will be allocated to process 1 as well as process 2 with a less waiting time. Because if the process 1 is using this resource, this process 2 has to wait until this resource is released by the process 1. So if there is another process 3, and if it is also using the same resource, so then this process 3 has to wait until the resource being released by process 1 and process 2. So this resource allocation with a less minimum, that means a minimum waiting time, the resource will be allocated by this operating system. And similarly, different processes can access different resources. So optimal utilization of resources can be done by the operating system. Okay, so this one is one service, and the next one is accounting. So accounting means operating system will provide different accounts for different users. Okay, so multiple users can have different accounts, so that each and every user will be having a different operations, right? So all the log of particular user can be maintained by the administrator. So what actually is being done by individual users will be maintained by the user administrator, right? So different accounts can be created for multiple users. So every log, okay, the log of user means whatever the operations being done by the user will be maintained in a log, and all these logs will be keep on monitoring by the administrator, right? So this is one service provided by the operating system. And the next one is security and protection. It's also very important, security and protection. So we need to provide the security for the data. Okay, we need to provide the protection and security for the data. So in the previous service, that is accounting, we are providing, the operating system is providing different accounts for different users, so that one user can't access the data of another user. Okay, so we can prevent from unauthorized access to data and files. And also we'll use some firewalls, okay, for the security purpose, okay. We'll use some firewalls, and we'll use some unauthorized access. Okay, we'll protect the data from unauthorized access to the data and files, because accounts will be having permissions. Okay, accounts will be having some permissions. So based upon the permissions, only the users can access the data who have the permissions, right? So without the permission, the data cannot be accessed by the unauthorized persons. So by this, the protection and security will be achieved, and this is also one service provided by the operating system. So all these are the different services provided by the operating system. So at a time I will write all things and we'll close. So the first one, user interface, program execution, communication, file system and manipulations, IO operations, input-output operations, error detection, resource allocation, accounting, protection and security. So all these are the services provided by the operating system, and all these comes under the user services, and last three comes under system services, right? So hope you understood about these services of operating system, right? If you are having any doubt regarding this one, feel free to post your doubts in the comment section. Definitely I will try to clarify all your doubts. If you really enjoyed my session, like my session, share my session with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.